Right, hello everyone and welcome back. Finally getting to do another tag along with me, a sort of cross between a tutorial and a craft with me. I haven't been here for a while. My iPad that I used to film with died, so I had to get that repaired. It's been some family stuff, one thing and another. Anyway, today we're going to have a go at this, recreating something similar to this. This is a pretty simple tag, really. So I'm not going to do it exactly the same, but I've chosen some bits the same. So we're going to use Mrs. Cogg's cottage. I've got two set up. Because I quite like to make two, and if something goes wrong with the first one, I've got a backup. So we'll see how we get on. I haven't actually prepared quite as much as I usually do. So let's get going. I have cut the tag bases and they're 3 1/4 by 6 1/2. I've chosen I've got the same sort of lace trim. This has been cut off a tablecloth, I think, and is vintage. But I thought we'd add in a bit of sari silk this time. So I've picked this sari silk. And for this one, if we get around to this one, I've gone for a contrast to the blue in this. So we've gone for a browny orange. So this sort of dark blue and this browny orange opposite on the colour wheel. So I know that they'll work together. That's my other lamp. Okay, so let's start with this one. And I think for the original I used one sheet of paper, but I've just picked out a couple of bits to collage onto this. Let's cut this off here to here. I'm actually going to glue, I think this first one I'll glue the tag. And I want it to go about 2/3 of the way across. And to get it straight, I just make sure in the light I can see that that's pretty close. So that's that side. And then for this side, I'm going to tear. This is just a little bit of digital download. I think it's from Ephemera's Vintage Garden. I'd obviously used half of it, so the other half is good. I might just ink down that edge, just to get rid of the whiteness really, not to particularly age it, just to get rid of the whiteness. And we'll put that over there. So this time I'm going to glue my paper. I'm going to stitch around this so it doesn't, the glue is important but not vital that every single little bit is covered. Okay, so that's quite a nice background. Now I can see I haven't got that very straight at all. Let's just pull that round a bit. That's better. And we'll cut this off. There's that. Okay, so that makes a nice background for that one. This is the picture that I've chosen, and the next decision is whether to mount that on something so that it pops off that page a little bit more, and I think I will do that. I haven't got anything prepared, so let's have a look. What I might do is go and have a look for something. That might work actually, something like that might work. So I won't go and look for it, I'll just get on with it. So I think this is a bit of file folder. And what I'll do is pop this on here and then tear it. And again, I'm going to stitch around this image at some point. So I'm not too worried about gluing right to the edges. And then to tear it, I'm keeping it really narrow, hoping I can tear it like this. So I'm pushing down on the ruler so that it doesn't slip. That just pops. Do you see how that just helps it pop off the page a little bit? On this one, I went to the edge, which was a slightly different look, and I think I'm going to stick with that. So I'm just going to cut that edge off. So it goes something like that. Ink the edges there. And the next thing I need to do is stitch. So I'm going to do 2 lots of stitching. First of all, I'm going to just anchor this down to the tag. So that it doesn't move when I do stitch it. And I'm putting it about halfway up. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I've got to thread my sewing machine, so obviously you don't want to watch me do that. So I'm going to go away, thread the sewing machine, I'm going to zigzag around this edge on 3 sides, and then I'm going to use a straight stitch all the way around the edge of the tag, and I'm going to ink the edges. I'll do the same with my other one and then I'll be back. Okay, so the stitching is done. I've zigzagged around here. I've used a brown variegated thread. I've done this one as well. I'll just show you this one. I use 2 different types. This dictionary and this is from a sewing book. And on this one I left the edge where I'd torn it out of the book. I sometimes like to do that. So now we're going to attach these. I was thinking of doing it this way for a change, but I actually quite like the way this goes over the image. So I'm going to use Fabri-Tac, and I'm just going to put a line down sort of about halfway. I could try stitching it straight on, but it would probably move. Come on, Fabri-Tac, there we go. And this dries quickly and is easy to sew through, so let's pop that on there. And I can trim it later if I need to. So you could leave it just like that, which is how I left the other one, although it was slightly more to the edge. But this time, as I said, I'm going to add a little bit of sari silk down this edge as well. Working out which way I want it. So what I'm going to do now is just going to anchor this a little bit. If if I can, just to try and stop it moving too much. So I'm putting a little bit of glue stick down there. I'll have it that way. And I'm going to run a zigzag stitch down just this edge, so if you just bear with me while I do that. That. The top, I'm going to cut it off, and I think I'll cut the bottom off, but I might just leave a tiny little bit here just so that I can fray it slightly at the end, so it's not too tidy. I think I've told you before, I do tend to the tidy side of whatever this is. What is this? So on the original one I had some words, and I used an eyelet but over some fabric, so we're going to do something similar, but the words I'm going to use this time, I'm going to use a found quote. So by that I mean something I've torn out of a book. You can see I don't have loads, but I nearly always find something that is appropriate. So that one says a hint of a smile, and so that would work. I want it to go at the bottom. What's about this one? Let's do that one, making things out of nothing. This image is from Mrs. Cogg's Countryside Chores. I can't remember the exact title, but I put it underneath DigiKit. I'm sure that's what these country people did and do. It doesn't, even with the inking, it doesn't really pop out of there. And on this one I did use a little bit more collage paper, so I'm going to go back to this brown paper and I'm just going to basically tear a chunk off like this. That's going to be too big, so okay, let's go. So you can see I'm just eyeballing it really to make sure it fits on there and that the words fit on it, so that will do. More inking. I use walnut stain, distress ink mainly, sometimes vintage photo, and I do always for these sort of vintage style things, do take the trouble to ink. It does make a big difference if that's the look you're looking for. So I'll pop that on there. And then our words. And then we've just got the top bit left to do. So I do want to put an eyelet in, but I think I want to stitch as well, and I want this to come well down, because I don't want too much of the text showing through, so probably about there. So if we trim that off, this is a really pretty pink that I found, and it sort of matches this little cottage beautifully. So again, I'm going to use a little bit of glue stick. That there. fold it over. I don't want too much up here because, as I said, I am putting an eyelet in as well. So let's see. Okay, so what we'll do is zigzag across here with the sewing machine, and then I'll do an eyelet with you. Not bothering to reverse or do anything fancy on there. So I'm going to put an eyelet in the top here, and I'm going to finish the other tag. I'll just snip these off, I think. So I'm using my crocodile, and again I'm just eyeballing this. When I go through fabric, it rarely cuts it exactly, so let's just snip that off. Find an eyelet. So what I'll do is set this in here, finish off the other one, and I'll just quickly show you both of those then. So there we are, 2 tags, variations on a theme, different from the other one, similar but just a slightly different take, and I really like all 3 of them. You don't have to put the eyelets in, obviously this tab would work on its own, but I just wanted a little bit of extra decoration really. And that's it for today. So hopefully this has been okay for you, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye bye.